In the far reaches of the galaxy, a massive fleet of alien ships stood ready. The Galactic Empire had always been the most powerful force in the known universe. No species had dared challenge them for generations. The Empire's fleet was enormous, hundreds of ships with powerful weapons capable of wiping out entire planets. To the Empire, their power was unquestionable. They had crushed rebel species and destroyed countless enemies, and no one dared challenge their dominance. But one day, something unexpected happened. A strange signal appeared on the radar, coming from the outer edges of known space. It wasn't much, just a small blip. The Empire's command center took little notice at first. After all, their fleet had patrolled these areas for centuries, and no one had ever come close to threatening them. Yet the signal persisted. For hours it echoed in the system, growing stronger, clearer. Some of the lower-ranking officers began to take notice, reported it to their superiors, but they were dismissed. "It's probably just another derelict ship," one officer said, "or a malfunction in the sensor system." But despite the dismissive attitude of the higher-ups, the signal was impossible to ignore. Finally, the Empire's high command agreed to investigate. They dispatched a fleet of reconnaissance ships to check it out. The alien ships moved silently through the dark reaches of space, closing in on the source of the signal. As they approached, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The surrounding space was calm, the stars shining brightly in the distance. Then, the Empire's ships detected something they had never seen before. A warship, single ship, floating quietly, seemingly out of place in the empty space. The ship was large, but it wasn't as massive as the Empire's flagship vessels. Its design was unfamiliar, sleek, and odd. It was almost as if the ship didn't belong to any known species. The ship's appearance was simple, but menacing, with sharp lines that cut through the silence of space. It seemed almost like it was waiting, watching. The fleet commander was puzzled. How could this ship have traveled so deep into the galaxy? Without detection? Who could possibly control such a vessel? The commander ordered his ships to circle the unknown warship, sending out a warning message. "This is the Galactic Empire. You are entering our territory. Identify yourselves immediately." There was no response. The unknown ship simply sat there, unmoving, its dark silhouette standing out against the backdrop of stars. The commander's patience wore thin. He ordered his fleet to begin scanning the ship's interior, trying to get a glimpse of who or what might be on board. Then, just as suddenly as the signal had appeared, a response came. But it wasn't what the commander expected. The message wasn't from any alien race. It wasn't even in any known language. Instead, it was a simple, direct transmission. "This is humanity. Prepare to face the consequences of underestimating us." The fleet commander froze in disbelief. Humanity. "What is this nonsense?" he muttered. "This ship must be a mistake." The idea that this single ship could pose any threat to the Galactic Empire was laughable. The Empire had defeated civilizations, much larger and more powerful. But the commander knew one thing. He couldn't ignore a direct challenge. He ordered his fleet to ready their weapons. But before they could fire a single shot, the unexpected happened. The human warship, which had been motionless up until that moment, suddenly sprang to life. Its engines flared to life, sending out a powerful energy surge that briefly disrupted the sensors of the Empire's fleet. The ships in the Empire's fleet scrambled to react, their weapons charging up, but it was too late. In the blink of an eye, the human ship fired. The shot was precise, hitting one of the larger battleships in the fleet. It wasn't a regular weapon, not anything the Empire had ever encountered. The battleship didn't explode in a fiery ball like expected. Instead, it disintegrated in an instant, crumbling into nothingness as though it had been shattered by an unseen force. The shockwaves from the attack rippled through the fleet. Officers and commanders watched in stunned silence as one of the most powerful ships in the galaxy was obliterated without even a second of warning. The Empire's fleet had been caught off guard, and now the terrifying reality was settling in. Humanity was here, and they were not what anyone had imagined. A fleet of hundreds of ships had just watched one of their own ships fall without a Single warning? Fear began to spread across the fleet. The Empire's once unquestionable might was suddenly being questioned. If one human ship could do this, what else could they do? What was this new weapon? How had humanity come to possess such power? The destruction of the first battleships sent shockwaves through the fleet. The Empire's commanders stared in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. Their greatest ship wiped out in an instant. No explosion, no warning, just gone. It was as if the human warship had erased it from existence. "Retreat!" one of the commanders shouted. "Get out of range!" Ow. But it was too late. The human ship, its engines glowing with an unnatural energy, moved with terrifying speed. The fleet tried to respond, weapons charging, shields raised, but they were no match for the power of the human vessel. In a split second, the warship fired again. This time the target was a smaller cruiser. The beam from the human ship struck the cruiser's shields, and for a moment it seemed like the ship might survive. But then the shields failed. In an instant, the cruiser was gone. It had vanished as if it never existed, leaving behind only the cold silence of space. The panic spread like wildfire through the Empire's fleet. "What are we dealing with?" A voice on the command deck trembled. "This can't be real. We've never seen anything like this before." The human ship fired again and again, each blast tearing through the alien ships with no effort. In a matter of minutes, the fleet that had once been the most feared in the galaxy was being dismantled piece by piece. The weapons of the Empire, built for war and designed to destroy entire civilizations, couldn't even put a scratch on the human warship's shields. The alien ships, in their attempt to retaliate, fired every weapon they had. Plasma bolts, energy beams, missiles, all of them missed or were absorbed by the shields of the human vessel. It was like trying to harm a rock with a feather. The human ship seemed unstoppable, an unyielding force moving through the galaxy, like a tidal wave, crushing everything in its path. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship, the crew moved with eerie calmness. The ship's captain, a human commander with a steady hand, watched as his crew expertly controlled the ship's systems. He wasn't surprised by the destruction. He had been prepared for this. This wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration of what humanity was capable of. The captain, his face illuminated by the glow of the ship's control panels, turned to his first officer. "Make sure we send a message," he said in a low voice. "The galaxy needs to know that humanity is no longer weak." Within moments, the warship's massive communication array activated, sending a simple but powerful message to the remaining Empire ships. "You are not the only ones who can conquer." The message was direct, a declaration of power. No other species had dared speak like that to the Galactic Empire before. They had always been the ones making demands, the ones holding the upper hand. But now the tables had turned. Back in the Empire's command center, the once confident leaders were now frantic. Reports came in, one after another. More ships had been destroyed. The human warship wasn't just attacking, it was outclassing every enemy ship it faced. Their once mighty fleet, which had been capable of conquering entire star systems, was now helpless. "This can't be happening," muttered an Empire admiral. "We've spent centuries building this fleet. Yes, how are they doing this? What is their weapon? Where did they even get this ship?" No one had answers. All they knew was that the human warship was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The humans had somehow harnessed a power beyond their understanding. They were using it to tear apart the Empire's ships without mercy. As the minutes passed, the fleet began to fall apart. Some ships tried to flee, but the human warship was faster. Others tried to fight back, launching everything they had in a desperate attempt to stop the onslaught. But every attack failed. The blink of an eye, another ship was gone. The Empire's once proud fleet was being wiped from the stars. On the bridge of the human ship, the captain watched the destruction unfold. His mission was clear. This was the moment when humanity would be recognized. The galaxy had underestimated humans for far too long. It was time for them to see the true power of Earth's finest. The enemy's fleet was now reduced to only a handful of ships, scattered and confused. The humans showed no signs of stopping, continuing their methodical assault. Each shot from the warship was a calculated strike, hitting only what needed to be hit, ensuring no survivors were left behind. There was no mercy. There was no negotiation. The time the clock hit for minutes since the first attack, the entire Empire fleet had been obliterated. The once mighty force was nothing but debris, floating aimlessly through space. The human warship had done the impossible. It had taken down an entire fleet in less than 5 minutes. The Empire had been shattered. Their greatest force, their pride, was gone. And all that remained was silence, the eerie, unnatural silence of space, where once confident commanders now had nothing to say. The galaxy had just witnessed the power of humanity. The captain of the human ship stood tall, his gaze fixed on the void before him. "Message sent," he said quietly. The galaxy was stunned. News of the destruction spread quickly. The once mighty galactic empire, feared by countless species, had just lost its most powerful fleet in under 5 minutes to a single human warship. It was a humiliation that the Empire's leaders could not ignore. Across the galaxy, the reactions were mixed, some in disbelief, some in fear, and others in awe. On the Galactic Empire's homeworld, the Council of Commanders gathered in urgent meetings trying to understand how this had happened. Their fleet had been the pride of the Empire. No one had ever challenged their strength until now. "This isn't possible," said the lead commander, his voice shaking with anger. "How could one ship do this? We had the largest fleet in the galaxy. This is beyond anything we've ever seen. The humans have somehow developed a weapon unlike anything we have," another officer added. "But we've had intelligence reports about their ships. They shouldn't be able to do this. Something is wrong." "They've always been insignificant," the first commander said, pacing. "Now they're a threat. This must be dealt with, or the galaxy will no longer see us as invincible." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, word of the human warship's arrival reached many distant worlds. Species who had once mocked humanity now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. The reputation of humans who had once been dismissed as weak and fragile was quickly changing. At the Galactic Council's meeting, a decision was made. The leaders of the Empire agreed that the only way to stop humanity from becoming an even greater threat was to eliminate them quickly, before others took inspiration from this terrifying display of power. A new, larger fleet would be assembled, and they would hunt down this human warship. They would crush them before they could build any more ships. But what the Empire didn't know was that humanity was already planning its next move. The human warship, still floating in the void of space, continued to send signals across the galaxy. "This is humanity," the broadcast continued. "We are not afraid of you. Do not mistake our silence for weakness. We will not hide. We are coming for you." Humanity had learned something crucial in this brief encounter. Their warship had destroyed the Empire's fleet, but they didn't intend to stop there. The message was clear. Humanity had the power to stand on equal ground with the Empire. But it wasn't enough to destroy just one fleet. Humanity had to prove that they could protect themselves. They could face any challenge that came their way. In the far reaches of the galaxy, some species watched in fear. The powerful ones began to reconsider their stance on humans. No longer could they dismiss the human race as insignificant. The shockwaves of the destruction rippled through the entire galaxy. And some species feared that humans would now rise to claim their place as one of the dominant forces in space. The reaction from one species in particular, the Vorkians, was one of deep concern. They had long been allies with the Galactic Empire, and their forces had fought beside the Empire in countless battles. But now, with the Empire's fleet gone, they feared what the future might hold. "We cannot sit idle," the Vorsian leader said in a private communication with his council. "If the humans can do this, what is stopping them from attacking us next? We must prepare for war." Other species, those who had long been oppressed by the Empire, were more hopeful. The resistance groups that had fought against the Empire's rule now saw an opportunity. If humanity could defeat the Empire, perhaps they could do the same. Whispers of alliance began to spread, but not everyone saw humanity as a threat. Some species, such as the peaceful Atrians, were hopeful that the destruction of the Empire's fleet meant the start of a new era. A time when the strong would no longer dominate the weak, when peace might finally have a chance. They began to reach out to humanity, offering their assistance in rebuilding what had been destroyed by the Empire's war machine. Back on Earth, the human warship's commander, Captain James Blackwood, stood silently in front of the ship's control panel. He was aware that the galaxy had noticed them, but he was focused on a bigger picture. This wasn't just about destroying one fleet. It was about ensuring humanity's future. The human race had always been underestimated, but that would change now. Blackwood knew that the galaxy's response would shape everything. "We've sent the message," Blackwood said to his crew, his voice calm but firm. "Now we prepare for what comes next." The crew worked tirelessly, gathering information and monitoring the response from across the galaxy. They were ready to defend humanity's place in the universe, no matter the cost. The warship had already proven its power. But the real challenge would be facing the inevitable retaliation from the Galactic Empire and its allies. As days passed, the human warship remained in orbit, a constant reminder of humanity's strength. The galaxy was divided. Some feared humanity, others hoped to align with them, and a few continued to underestimate them. Days passed, and the galaxy's response to the destruction of the Empire's fleet continued to grow. The shock of what had happened slowly turned into a feeling of fear and curiosity. The question on everyone's mind was no longer how did they do this, but what comes next. And that was the problem. No one knew. The Empire, shaken to its core, began to rebuild. The galactic leaders held countless meetings, trying to come up with a plan to deal with the humans and their warship. The loss of their fleet was something they couldn't ignore. They had too much power, too many resources, to just roll over. They began to prepare an even larger force, hoping that a bigger fleet might be the answer. But this time, they wouldn't be facing just one warship. Humans had proven themselves capable of building something that could challenge the most powerful force in the galaxy. It was no longer just about a single ship. The entire race was now a problem. Meanwhile, humanity watched from the shadows. On Earth, there were discussions about what to do next. Captain Blackwood, still in command of the warship that had devastated the Empire's fleet, sat with his top officers in a darkened room aboard the ship. "We've proven our strength," Blackwood said, looking around at the faces of his crew. "But now we must decide how to handle what comes next." He knew that the destruction of the Empire's fleet was only the beginning. There were powerful species in the galaxy who might see humanity as a threat. There were others who might see them as an ally. And there were those who, no matter what, would never accept humans as equals. "We need to be careful," said Lieutenant Collins, one of Blackwood's trusted officers. "We can't just go around attacking anyone who gets in our way. We have to think about the long-term consequences of our actions." Blackwood nodded. "You're right. But we also need to make sure the galaxy knows that humanity is not something to be taken lightly. We can defend ourselves. And we will." The crew was silent, but there was a sense of agreement in the room. Humanity had shown its power, but it wasn't just about the warship. The true strength of humanity lay in its ability to adapt, to build, and to never back down. Blackwood knew that if they were going to survive, they would need more than just firepower. They needed allies, and they needed to make sure that no one thought they could be bullied again. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species began to take notice of the human warship and its devastating power. Some species, like the peaceful Etrians, saw this as an opportunity for a new alliance. They believed that the old order, with the Empire in control, was broken. Humanity might be their best hope for a peaceful future, one where the strong no longer dominated the weak. "We have to reach out to them," the Etrian leader said to her council. "Humanity has proven that they can take down the Empire. If we ally with them, we can build something better, something stronger than the old regime." But not everyone was so hopeful. The Vorkians, who had long been allies of the Empire, were afraid. "The humans have shown what they are capable of," the Vorkian leader said, pacing in his war room. "They have the power to crush us if they choose. We cannot allow them to grow any stronger." The Vorkians, along with several other species who had benefited from the Empire's power, began to prepare their own fleets, just in case. They knew that a confrontation with humanity could be inevitable, and they wanted to be ready. But what they didn't understand was that humanity wasn't looking for a fight. They were simply trying to survive in a galaxy that had long overlooked them. Back on Earth, Blackwood received word from his superiors. The human government, the leaders, who had sent the warship on its mission, had decided to move forward with a new strategy. They weren't going to just wait for the Empire or anyone else to come after them. They were going to expand, to build a fleet of their own. And it was time to start looking for allies. But even as the humans prepared, there was something that worried Blackwood. The message that had been sent across the galaxy, "We are not afraid of you," had been heard by all. But no one knew how the galaxy would react in the long term. There was a chance that humanity could become a target, not because of what they had done, but because of the fear they had created. As he looked out over the vastness of space, Blackwood thought about what had happened in the past few days. It had been a whirlwind, and there was no telling where it would lead. The humans had shown they could stand against the most powerful empire in the galaxy. But at what cost? Would the galaxy see them as allies or enemies? He turned back to his crew. "Prepare for the next phase," he said. "We need to make sure that humanity's presence is felt across the galaxy. But we need to do it wisely. We don't want to be hunted." As the ship's crew worked, the tension in the galaxy grew. Species were preparing for what might come. Some were hoping for peace, while others were readying for war. Through it all, humanity stood at the edge of the unknown, uncertain of what the future held, but determined to survive. It had been weeks since the destruction of the Empire's fleet, but the echoes of that moment still rang in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. The Empire had been brought to its knees by one single warship, and though they were rebuilding, the Empire's leadership knew they could not simply move on from this defeat. They had to respond, or they would lose their place as the most powerful force in the galaxy. The decision was made. The Empire would assemble its greatest fleet yet. No longer would they rely on the old tactics, the old ships. It would create something new, something more powerful. The best engineers, the most experienced commanders, were all called to the front lines. The goal was simple: destroy the humans and make sure they would never threaten the Empire again. But there was a complication. The human warship had not appeared again. The Empire's spies had tried to locate it, but the ship had vanished, as if it had never been there at all. The once great fleet had been erased, leaving behind only silence and mystery. Some commanders believed that the humans had used some kind of advanced cloaking technology to disappear, while others feared that humanity had far more ships hidden in the dark corners of space, on Earth. However, Captain Blackwood and his crew had not disappeared at all. They were still watching. The human warship floated quietly, but it had not left space unguarded. Blackwood knew that humanity's next step was crucial. They could no longer afford to sit in the shadows, hiding their strength. The warship had proven that humanity was capable of defeating the Empire. But if they were to survive, they needed allies, strong allies, who could help them face what was coming. One of Blackwood's officers, Lieutenant Collins, brought up a new report. "We've been contacted by the Etrians," she said. "They want to talk? They say they want an alliance with us." Blackwood considered this carefully. The Etrians were known for their peaceful nature and had never been involved in the Empire's wars. Their help could be valuable, but Blackwood wasn't sure they were ready to face the full might of the Empire. The humans, for all their strength, would still be outnumbered if the Empire's new fleet was anything like the old one. "We need to think about this," Blackwood said. "The Etrians can help us, but they are not warriors. We'll need to gather more allies before we make our move." In the weeks that followed, humanity began to make connections. The humans weren't just looking for allies. They were looking for those who understood the value of freedom, the importance of standing up to tyranny. The Etrians were just the beginning. As they built their alliances, the human warship remained a symbol of their strength, a reminder that they had already changed the course of history. Back in the Empire's capital, The new fleet was nearing completion. The Empire's top commanders were confident that they had learned from their previous mistakes. They had rebuilt their fleet with faster ships, stronger shields, and more powerful weapons. It was an army designed to crush anyone who stood in their way. The Empire's leaders believed they were prepared. They had underestimated humanity once. They wouldn't make the same mistake again. The fleet was ready to move. The only thing left was to find the human warship and destroy it before humanity had a chance to form any serious alliances. But the Empire had one problem they had yet to solve. They had no idea where to look. The humans had shown an almost supernatural ability to vanish when they needed to, leaving no trace of their movements. Even their spies had been unable to track the warship's next move. Captain Blackwood, however, had a different plan. He knew that if the Empire was going to come after humanity again, they would need to be prepared. He gathered his crew and made a bold decision. "It's time," Blackwood said, his voice firm. "We'll go to them." The crew was silent for a moment, processing the captain's words. "You mean attack?" Lieutenant Collins asked, her brow furrowed. "No," Blackwood replied. "Not attack. But we'll make our presence known. We will show them that we are not afraid and that we will not back down. We will go to the heart of their empire." The crew knew what this meant. They would have to face the full power of the Empire, but Blackwood believed it was the only way. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, but now they had to see something more. The humans would fight. It's not just for survival, but for their place in the galaxy. The warship moved. Out of hiding, its sleek form cutting through the void of space. The Empire's spies, who had thought humanity would stay hidden, were caught off guard. By the time the Empire's fleet moved to intercept, the humans were already heading toward the heart of their enemy's territory. As the human warship traveled toward the Empire's capital, its crew prepared for the worst. But Blackwood knew that this mission wasn't just about defeating the Empire. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was not a force to be ignored, that they were capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire in the galaxy.